Before we start, I would just like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by a third party. If you are seated in the lower public seating area, it is likely that the recording camera will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility that your image will become part of the broadcast. Apologies.
Apologies have been received from Councillor Judy Jennings.
Is there any substitute members?
No substitute members.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll say that again. Declarations of interest? We'll take that as no. Thank you. Notes of the previous meeting, 5 to 10. Anybody got anything they disagree with on that? Okay, thank you. Any matters arising from those?
No matters arising, not covered on the agenda.
Okay. Terms of reference to the work programme. Everybody up to date with that? I know Laura would like to add something.
The work programme, the climate change action plan will be postponed till next year, and we are still looking for ideas and your suggestions for inclusion for the last meeting of the year.
Any? Okay. Right. Moving quickly on then. Parking update, James.
Thank you. The report in front of you is an update on the impact of the off-street car parking tariffs that were introduced on the 1st of April. And so the tariffs, the main changes were the 20p for 30 minutes went to 30p for 30 minutes, and then the 1 hour went to £1 and £2 for 2 hours. We've also introduced business and residence permits in Cornmill Car Park, Waltham Abbey, and business permits in Oakwood Hill East Car Park, along with EV charging at Oakwood Hill East. And the demand and usage of the EV parking has been really good. It's kind of doubled the usage of the car park. Obviously, we haven't had a full year of the tariffs being in place, but at the moment we are on track. We estimated approximately £150,000 additional income from the tariff changes, and we are on track for that at this point of time. In terms of the usage, we're kind of around 90% pre-pandemic levels for short stays, which and then it's still with the long stay kind of commuter car parking, we're around 70% pre-pandemic levels. And in terms of kind of any feedback from residents, it's kind of been minimal in terms of any complaints or feedback from the introduction of the tariff charges. The report also references further EV charging points that we're looking to install following the success of the ones at Oakwood Hill East Car Park. At the moment, we're looking at installing some in Banson's Lane Car Park in Ongar, and we hope to install some in Cornmill Car Park in Waltham Abbey and Burton Road Car Park in Debden. Ongar is a bit more further forward. That's with our planning colleagues at the moment, and with Cornmill and Burton Road, that's with the energy company. Just with we're waiting for their assessment of the amount of power and the supply, but we hope to install them as soon as we possibly can this year. In terms of on-street, so on-street parking enforcement and policies, that's all through NEP, the North Essex Parking Partnership. The report has a very brief update in terms of pavement parking or obstructive parking, and still at this present time it's not prohibited in Essex, therefore NEP have got no powers to enforce against obstructive parking, and there's no been really further update on that. So it is a matter for the police, but it's obviously an extremely low priority for the police to enforce parking offences for obstructive parking. Should this become decriminalised, then that will enable NEP to enforce these actions, but at present they can't. The report also mentions about 3PR scheme, which is a school-led initiative that NEP deliver. We've got, I think, six primary schools, and this is around trying to work with the school to reduce congestion around drop-off and pick-up time around school. We also work with NEP on this where we've got a nearby off-street parking. We make, if possible, we make that available to parents that they can park their car there and then walk the short distance to the school rather than driving close to the school. The report also mentions around traffic regulation orders. So we have an allocation that we can have 6 schemes per year. That process, so the TRO process, an application's submitted online. It requires support from the local councillor or county councillor in town and parish council and residents' support. These applications close on the 31st of July. They're then considered by EFDC officers along with our portfolio holder and then taken to a NEP joint committee in October for approval, and there's further details in the report. In terms of one thing that's not in the report, but I'll ask Amelia to circulate after this meeting, a new thing that NEP, a new feature that NEP have introduced on their website is in terms of enforcement. If there's a particular hotspot area that requires targeted enforcement or any enforcement visits, there is a feature on NEP's website where you can put in the details and put in a request for that enforcement, and then NEP will liaise directly with the person that has requested that. I think kind of historically, a lot of the requests for enforcement either go via kind of the parking team or myself to pass on to NEP, so hopefully this will kind of speed up the process, but I will caveat that NEP have limited enforcement resources as well. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, Richard, looks like you want to go first.
You know me, chief troublemaker. This one is not a criticism at all. You said long-term parking was back up to about 70% of pre-pandemic. Obviously, people's working patterns have totally changed. I know quite a lot of people don't go up the city now about 2 days a week, whereas they used to go 5. Do we ever think we will get back, or do you think that's about the level we will stay at now?
I think it's likely to stay around this level. It's been a considerable time in that, so I think it's been consistent at these levels for some period of time now.
Therefore, with the increased charges and everything else, and the belief that we could do 150,000, if we're only got 70%, is that being a bit hopeful?
No, the So basically, the £150,000 does take that into consideration. So yeah, all good.
Councillor Heap?
Thank you, and I take on board what you say about the NET website being able to report or get areas targeted, but we have had recent introduction of a scheme in Buckerstill East. It's always going to be Buckerstill East, and the hours need tinkering with, but there doesn't seem to be an easy mechanism for doing that, even though the residents all agree that the hours do need tinkering with, and it's drastically under-policed, and there's a lot of revenue being lost there. And particularly at the weekends, there are lots of cars parked there all day, all weekend in fact, and that's causing the same problem that there always was. So there's something that needs to be looked at quite carefully.
James?
Yeah, we can look into that if you don't mind kind of emailing specific details, and that we can take that back with NEP. Is this for a TRO scheme that was recently introduced? Okay, yeah, we can feed that back and see if we can make any amendments.
Any other comments? You again, Councillor Bassett?
Thank you. This one's just another question. It's something happened before. When you work out this district only gets 6 TROs a year across the whole district, and the size of it means if you've got a TRO and it's just not going to happen, to be honest. Is there a method where we can pump prime the application if we know how much it's going to cost and it's agreed it's a sensible one? Can it be paid for outside, or must we use that budget?
It's an interesting question. I'd have to take it back to NEP. I'd imagine we could fund it ourselves, but it's not just an issue of the funding, it's NEP's resources to implement the TRO. So they cover six local authority areas in that. And so at the moment, it's 6 TROs. I would say on average, the last 2 to 3 years, we've probably had 12 TROs each year, because things that under health and safety, junction protection, residence permit schemes, they don't count as part of that 6. They're considered as bonus schemes. And what I think Councillor Kane backed me up on this, we seem to be the only authority that generally takes advantage of that to have more than our allocation. But I'll take the question around if we were to fund something back to that.
Councillor Allgood?
Apologies if my ignorance on this subject is rather poor. Electric vehicles charging points. Obviously, come next year, if they suddenly introduce the ULEZ much wider, there's going to be a lot more people getting a lot more electric cars. Should we not be ramping this up? Because already you're saying the ones that we've got are well supported. I'm slightly worried, I mean, bear in mind all the Teslas that were packed up in Christmas time, that actually we're not supporting enough electric cars coming forward. Is there a better way? I know like Waltham Forest do the lampposts, so I don't know if that falls under your remit sort of thing. So is that something we should be looking forward to?
In terms of the lampposts, that's County Council. I believe Stephen Lloyd-Jones will be at the next Stronger Place talking about sustainable transport, and generally Stephen leads on the EV point side of things. From our point of view on off-street car parks, the issue is power supply and cost to implement. It's around, I think, is it about £100,000 per?
100 to 150.
So it's extremely expensive, and also we have to then find an EV charging company that wants to install EV charging. Our arrangement with Instavolt is that they fully fund it, and they've done a comprehensive review of the whole district, and they only identified 4 car parks within the district that it's beneficial for them to install EV charging, because the cost would be to prohibit it and they wouldn't get the use. So it is something that we're looking at, and there is the demand, and Stephen will, I'm sure Stephen will say the same thing. The demand is there, but our hands are tied in terms of funding, and there's certainly a large demand for on-street, but again, that function is Essex County Council.
James, can I just ask how that will work in a car park? Will the car be limited to how long it can be there? And is it only allowed to park in that bay while it's charging?
So electric vehicles in EV bays are only allowed to be in there while charging, and they must be an electric vehicle, of course, and pay a parking charge as well to be in those bays.
So how will that be monitored?
So we enforce those bays, so we have civil enforcement officers in the car parks, and they check that there's a valid parking session in place and that the vehicle is charging.
So does that mean there would be extra people going around checking, or?
Not extra, it's part of their general deployment.
Because take Ongar, for example, you see them, well, about once every 4 or 5 hours. So if somebody's in there and, parked up, can they stay there? It's actually administering that they're not staying there, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I mean, we do carry out regular enforcement in our car parks, so we would definitely enforce against vehicles that are not charging or in a bay that they shouldn't be in.
Because after seeing the problems at Christmas with people queuing to charge and other people just parked on the bay not charging, or charged their car but still staying in the cafe or whatever until they're ready to leave, was causing so many problems with a limited amount of charging points, which I think Councillor Allgood was referring to.
This isn't in a public EFDC car park, is it?
No.
No, but because generally they don't really enforce those EV bays, whereas we do, and we require payment of the parking charge, so it's in our traffic regulation order.
That's the answer I wanted. Anybody else got questions? I think we've got some comments back on that, which you asked for. And thank you. Off-street parking enforcement policy. I think it is your turn now.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This report is asking members to adopt the updated off-street civil parking enforcement policy, and it's front of the Stronger Place tonight before it goes to Cabinet. As members may be aware, Epping Forest District Council operate 22 off-street car parks in the district, and we are responsible for the management and enforcement of our car parks. Our current civil parking enforcement policy was last updated in 2016, and parking officers have reviewed the existing policy and made a few amendments to make sure it's relevant and up to date. I think it's worth mentioning that civil parking enforcement is a legal process, and we're not proposing any change to the way the policy functions. But to summarise the amendments, we've simplified the document structure and also updated the terminology. So, for example, parking attendants, traffic wardens are now known as civil enforcement officers. We've made some updates generally, like we now have electric vehicle charging points, so we have included how we enforce EV bays and how challenges are assessed in that respect. And also the current policy was prepared at a time where we didn't offer any virtual payments, so it's been updated to reflect and include virtual stays. We've also added a £50 administration fee for suspensions, which we are entitled to charge legally, and it is charged by other authorities. So we've identified it as an opportunity to generate additional income, to recover officer time and other costs that we incur as a result of arranging the suspensions. happy to take any comments or questions.
Okay, members. We've actually been asked to consider this for adoption. I think it goes to Cabinet in March, so away you go, Richard.
Yes, I do tend to read these reports, funnily enough. Little point on point 4.2, page 39, observation and grace periods. Can you confirm that the enforcement officer takes a picture of the car? Because I've actually had one sent through and they'd misread the number plate and suddenly my Mercedes became a red van.
So when CEOs enforce, they do take photographs and that is uploaded to the system. So if you challenge, we would review the case and that should be sorted.
Second point was on flat tyres. Well, apart from the fact it's amazing how many people have got no idea how to change a tyre anymore. And a lot of cars do not come equipped with a jack or tyre, which is always a problem. And, you know, you get a flat tyre, and if you haven't got somewhere to go and you haven't got a mobile phone, you tend to have to go and try and find some help somewhere to assist and do a call-in. And, you know, that's a bit harsh there, saying if you've left the car for assistance, you're going to give you a ticket and that's it. When, if you've got a flat tyre, you're obviously then struggling and you might be able to fix it. And as you said, disabled there, they most probably wouldn't be able to do it anyway. And also it depends where the vehicle is you wouldn't want to change a tyre on a busy main road. You'd want to try and get the car out of the way, or someone professional that could put something at the back to enable you to do it. I just think that just needs to be a little bit kinder, shall we say.
Thank you. So in terms of kind of how we assess and deal with representations, they are kind of best practice standards and we follow those. But I think what's key to kind of consider here, and it is in the policy, is that each case is assessed on its own merits. So we do recognise that situations may occur and it's not possible. And all motorists have the right to submit a challenge, and that's where we do assess the case, really.
You finished? Has anybody else got any points? Councillor Brady?
Well, it's not a direct question at all. It's just to say to Richard, I think when I've been in those situations, I'm not quite sure what... Are you sort of saying your car springs a flat tyre in the car park? Is that what you're sort of saying? Or? But what's that to do with parking in the car parks? That's what I'm saying. Right. Well then, what I've always done in these situations is just write a note and put the note in the windscreen and hope that the traffic regulator, explain the exact situation, whatever. It might not be a tyre, it might be something else that's broken in the car, why it won't start. Put the notice in the window and hope for the best. I'm sure that's probably the best answer in the short term, isn't it? Yes, yes. Yeah,
Richard,
absolutely.
you
I
put your
hope
mic
so.
on.
I would hope so.
Anybody else? Can't believe this is so quiet tonight. What about disabled parking spaces?
So blue badge holders park for free in our car parks as long as they display a valid blue badge.
As long as the person who is disabled is with them.
Absolutely. Civil enforcement officers are now able to confiscate blue badges if they suspect misuse.
Can I also ask you about grace periods? Can you just talk us through? I think it was page 39, wasn't it?
Page 39. I always get the two confused.
Because I think it's just something about grace period does not apply to the vehicle or something, doesn't it?
No, so there are certain cases where grace periods won't apply.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
Sorry, let me just get my notes on it. Apologies. So with the observation periods, that's set by legislation, so we can't really change that. The grace period is something that we agree locally, and that's 10 minutes that we've kind of agreed.
So that grace period is to go and get changed to pay for it or something of that nature.
So grace periods is when, like, the ticket's expired. You give a period of like 10 minutes for the motorist to sort of come back. Yeah, that's.
I was asking, is there a grace period if you haven't got the change to actually go and get it and come back?
I'm not entirely sure,
No,
Councillor.
I'm not either. It's just,
I'll get back to you on that one.
it's amazing how many people you see at a car haven't got the right change and running around trying to get it. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is, now you've raised it around blue badge holders, you've mentioned that enforcement officers are now empowered to take blue badges. I've seen on a number of occasions now, Epping High Street in particular, where a number of people appear to be parking there, legging it out the car, running up the road, quickly grabbing something out of Marks and Spencer's, etc. I'm just wondering, and I'm not saying that everybody has hidden disabilities, etc., but when you say that they can empowered to take it, how many have they taken in the last year? I think is a reasonable question to ask. And what are we going to do going forward about making sure that the enforcement officers actually proactively check the disabled parking bays? Because although these signs are in the windscreens, quite obviously some of these people are out and they're not accompanied by the person who is the actual badge holder.
Absolutely, Councillor Bedford. We are aware that some people do unfortunately misuse blue badges, and unfortunately CEOs won't be able to confiscate or inspect a blue badge unless they actually see the person leaving the vehicle and suspect that kind of misuse. But I mean, I can provide the data on how many we've confiscated, but I know right now we've got 2 in our parking cabinets, so it is something that we do kind of work quite thing on.
Councillor Bedford.
Yeah, just quickly come back on that. Obviously, we need to try and discourage that. So have we thought about doing publicity around blue badge confiscation when they are confiscated? Instead of just putting them in the cupboard, like you say, 1, they have to be revoked by DVLA, and 2, we could do a good publicity campaign about blue badge holders not being blue badge holders, if you know what I mean.
I think publicity is a really good idea. I think we can definitely look into that. But in terms of the blue badges in the cabinet, they are reported to Essex County Council, who then take the necessary action.
Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. Just in response to Councillor Bassett's question, broken down vehicles are covered in 4.4.7 on pages 43 through 44, including the flat tyre scenario.
Use your mic, please, Councillor Bassett.
Sorry, yes, I did see that in there, but it didn't say, it was a bit black and white, and the exceptions or problems that you might have nowadays with modern cars and the ability of people to actually change it, because you can't drive it away.
Any comeback on that?
In such instances, evidence from the assisting party is required.
Councillor Allgood, you want to come in on this?
Okay, so as an ex-police officer, basically it's a failure of an MOT not to have a vehicle with a satisfactory spare tyre or a means to pump it up. So there is actually a kit that comes with all the cars that don't have spare vehicles. If they don't work, that's an MOT failure. So it is covered. And if the wheel is so badly damaged, it will be obvious and therefore it will be exempt or it will be covered as part of that. Thank you.
Good answer. Should have thought of that one. Any other points we want to raise? Members? Are we happy for this to go forward? Yes? Okay, thank you. Well, it brings us to the last one on the agenda tonight. Air Quality Action Plan. Again, we've got to consider the attached report. Who wants to start this one off? Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I'm just introducing it. There's lots in here I don't understand the actual technical detail of. I'd like to thank the officers for the work they put into this, and we have to consider and comment, and I hope you will agree that this can go forward. I think it's a really good piece of work, so I'm going to pass over to the people that really do understand it now. Thank you.
Yeah, so the report is just to raise the awareness of the action plan. We intend to go out to consult in February for 4 weeks, and then it will come back to Cabinet in March, 13th of March. So it really is for comments and anything for us to take forward or take back. I've got the 2 officers here that are very technically qualified, so any sort of technical questions, then I'll certainly be deferring to them. Thank you.
Anybody want to start off? Councillor Heap.
Well, thank you. Well, the first thing I'd like to do is ask for time to write some comments, because otherwise I could be here for days. Bore everybody rather stupid. A few things that do stick out is like the freight and delivery management. How on earth can that be policed if there's a hold-up at the junction 26? All of the lorries and all the vans are going to go everywhere from wherever they come from. So I can't see quite how that can be policed, but maybe get advice from my right here. Other things, like encouraging car sharing. Well, that's really not going to work now with time of COVID, is it? A lot of the stuff to do with transport, we need the transport before we can encourage people not to get in their cars. It's got to be almost 2 men and a dog on a bus would be sufficient provision as far as I'm concerned. We don't make much in this of what happens to other receptors like bees, because they're very, very important, and some of the elements that are coming out of this will affect other things other than humans. But shifting cars from one point to another, if we have a CAZ, will result in much greater pollution in somewhere like Buckerstill East, which is already heavily polluted, which does show out in the report. Other things, slightly trivial, on the last page of FO3, fewer children, not less. If you can count it, it's fewer. If it's general, it's less. That's it for now.
Does anybody want to make a reply to that? Yes.
I mean, with the freight one, I can try and address some of the points that you brought up. With regards to the freight one, that is under a planning policy proposal. So that would be regulated through planning enforcement if we did receive complaints or witnessed freight not complying. Okay.
Just following on that, I've seen a planning application for the construction management plan in it, and it stipulates which direction the vehicles are going to be entering and leaving from the site, and particularly actually for the condo building next door. So that's included in the construction management plan. So that's actually stated there.
Councillor Heap, if you could let them have your comments by next week. Yeah. Councillor Allgood?
Is there any consideration being taken into, again, when ULEZ comes in, and there's obviously going to be a number of people that will be parking just short of Redbridge, obviously, and that's us in Essex that they will be doing. So obviously we're going to have a bit of an impact where all the cars that aren't allowed to go into ULEZ unless they want to pay £15, so they're all going to be stopping right in our area.
So the ULEZ is of concern to us. We did write to DEFRA for guidance with respect to it, and it was quite vague. They basically just said to keep monitoring and including it in our annual status reports, which we provide to them, which is what we intend to do. At the moment, we haven't created any actions specific to that because we would need to see the impact first before deciding on any action that could possibly be taken with respect to it.
Anybody else got anything? Councillor Brady?
I'm just wondering if this department has any input at all into the planning decisions that are all coming up, because obviously we're starting to build thousands more new properties in the district, and a lot of the, you know, will it make the air situation, pollution worse. But if when we built every single one of these new setups, we made sure that there was a safe cycleway from each of these new developments to the nearest town, to the nearest shops, etc., that would help mitigate. I wonder if that's anything to do with this department or if it's entirely in planning, and I wonder if pressure could be put from here, because I feel like I'm a lone person saying these things and they all look at me as I'm mad. But it's just hit me that we've been looking at a site in Thornwood, and there's another big site coming up in Thornwood, and there is not a safe cycleway into Epping from Thornwood. It's less than a mile probably. It's completely flat, but the pavement runs out. You know, are discussions being had with the Corporation of London to make a safe cycleway for those two new 300 odd houses or whatever's coming there? I just wondered.
Jenny, I think you'd like to answer that, wouldn't you?
Councillor Brady, if I can pick up on that point. So at the next Stronger Place, Stephen Lloyd-Jones will be coming to talk to you about sustainable transport, and there's quite a piece of work going on around cycleways and sort of healthy, active travel pathways, particularly associated with the Harlow and Gilston Garden Town. So if it's all right, I think we might be able to pick up a bit more on that point at the next Stronger Place, because Stephen will be here to answer lots of those questions for you.
Councillor Bedford?
Thank you, Chairman. I've been trying to look through the report just to see if you'd picked up on the fact that the government are funding a reduced bus fare system across Essex for the months January, February and March of this year. It would be interesting to know what impact that might have on bus usage and take-up, reducing the fare, encouraging more people onto buses. I think that's an important piece of information that could feed in to the report as we go forward. The air quality monitoring as well, I'm wondering what the scope is for actually introducing or trialling around one of the schools, especially where we've got a high density of commuters that live very close to the school but still insist on driving their vehicle to the school. So we think about what they do in Hackney and London boroughs, where they have a school exclusion zone during peak times, enforced by cameras on the traffic. Obvious exclusions need to be for disabled persons, local residents going to or from or entering, leaving that area. But residents from outside a general zone close to a school, there's no reason why they need to take their car to school. Thank you.
Yeah, we could certainly have a look at that and work with colleagues NEP on that. I think that it's something that we've sort of would like to have a look at. And we also said about having an education sort of campaign around the schools that's already in the action plan as well, around encouraging people to switch off their engines, etc. Around that sort of engage and encourage, and then if not, look to enforce. So there's a big piece of work going around that, but we can certainly engage with NEP on that.
I'd like to ask, it's 6.1 at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are we actually looking for as a measurement?
Can you repeat the question?
Epping Forest is 6.1%.
Oh, okay, I know what you're
Yeah,
talking
and I'm
about
just
now.
saying, where are we looking to get it to?
Ideally the lowest possible, preferably below the England average.
Which is?
It is in the report. I don't know it off the top of my head. If you just give me a moment, I can find it though.
And it sort of carries on from there. I was going to ask how it varies across the authority, because obviously you've got the high points around the motorway, the M25, the M11, and then when you get out to the greener areas, it'd be interesting to know, because obviously where you've got a school as well, you will see the hot points at certain times of the day, as Councillor Bedford was saying.
Yeah. You're just going to have to... Can I get back to you on that? Because I thought I had that in here, but I don't seem to.
Okay. You want a few minutes or?
Yeah.
Anybody else got any questions? Councillor Bassett.
Thank you very much. These are a few points. On page 67, on the executive summary, one area which isn't mentioned, which I'm using my old age of being a councillor, when it was in my portfolio and we're measuring air quality, one of the worst areas in the district was around the Wakes Arms roundabout, because you get the queues coming through the forest, the queues coming up from the M25 up there, and it can stack all the way back, and they're just sitting there with their engines running. Wouldn't switch it off because you're going up the hill.
Yeah.
And that's just not mentioned as a bad area and what to do. I'll also point out that Essex were producing, if you're talking on HGVs, they were producing about 10 years ago, and I don't think I've ever seen it yet, a freight management strategy for Essex as to how they foresee things going, how they were going to, routes for lorries, everything else was all going to be all singing, all dancing, and it's never ever appeared. And I would have thought it would need a policy across Essex to enable us to fit in with that, to actually work better.
Yeah.
Do you want to come back on that, Andy?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not aware of that, but it's certainly something we'll pick up and come back to you on as to where they are with that and what's happened.
Do you want to come back? Thank you.
Okay, so in relation to the Wakes Arm roundabout, what's important with regards to this piece of work that we're doing is exposure in relation to human health. So because there aren't people living right there, that's not, even though it might have high pollution levels, it's not considered an air quality management area because there aren't people living right there exposed to it. Sorry? In the Wakes Arm roundabout where...
Yeah, just as you come up to the Wakes Arms, there's all of the forest rangers now.
But that is some distance from the roundabout, correct?
Could you say that again over the mic, please? Could you just...
Sorry.
As you come up the hill to get to the Wakes Arms, on the left-hand side, about 20 or 30 foot from the road, there is the Forest Rangers' houses there.
Yes.
We can have a look at that. Yeah.
And obviously you've got people working there, you've got the restaurant there and everything else, and people sitting in those queues getting polluted, shall we say.
Sitting outside at the restaurant.
Yes.
That's an outside dining area.
I'd also like to point out on our page 83 of our Air Quality Action Plan, there is the error bookmark not defined.
'83.
It's in the list of tables.
Okay. Councillor Bedford?
Thank you. There's a couple of points there, obviously, to pick up through the Portfolio Advisory Group that's already been working on a lot of this, the suggestions going forward. One of the, a couple of key points are that the air monitoring, I believe, was agreed with Corporation of London, where it would be situated on the approach to Wakes Arms roundabout. So I'm sure that there is some air quality monitoring that's taking place close to the houses down there, and also the stables, which are a little bit further down. The other key points to think about with the air quality around that is it came up at the meeting and we discussed about portable signage going there, which is please switch off your engines in traffic, which was a temporary measure. We can't have anything permanent because obviously it's Corporation of London land. We did discuss it at the Portfolio Advisory Group meeting and it was taking forward, and I believe Corporation of London were interested in that idea of putting some temporary signage in, very similar to the beware deer signs that are up the road here. So there are things afoot in monitoring and trying to manage the air quality around the roundabout, but obviously the constrictions imposed by Corporation of London means that we can't do a great deal around that specific area. What we can try and do is make sure that the traffic flows as freely as possible, which then is down to Essex County Council I believe there is already a portion of money being put aside by Essex County Council for road improvements on the A103 between Wakes Arms and Woodford, which would greatly assist, and also with crossing points down there which are quite dangerous, not only for horse riders but for members of public and walkers, riders, etc. So there is work that's ongoing about air quality management within the forest, and we know that there will be a review of the air quality going forward. Obviously that's part of the mitigation strategy for the SAC. Thank you, Chairman.
Do we have anything else you want to bring up? Councillor Heap?
Yes, just a comment, and I was surprised that Qualis were registered as on the steering group because they're a wholly owned company, wholly owned by us. So I'm surprised that they need to have a say.
So the reason why I reached out to Qualis was, and it's not just Qualis, I'm actually would love to reach out to any businesses that operate within our district. Everyone has a responsibility for air pollution and their contribution. So the more people we get involved in the discussion and taking action amongst themselves, the better results we will get in relation to improving air quality in the district. Qualis just so happened to be one that I reached out to because we were dealing with them for some construction sites that are happening in the area already.
Want to come back?
Yeah. Yes, take that point, but I kind of think they should just do what they're told, all of them. If we decide that's how it should be, then that's how it should be.
Thank you, Councillor Heap. Anybody else? I think we've discussed that, and you've got some interesting points to look at. Thank you very much for that. Our next meeting, members, is the 7th of March. Go on.
And the meeting time will be at 7 o'clock, as per all the other meetings.
Councillor McCready?
Thank you, Chairman. I should have said this earlier, missed the point. I was a little saddened that the Climate Change Action Plan has been taken off the next meeting. Could you tell us when it is going to happen, and is it going to happen? Because I feel we've rather lost our way with climate change at the moment. Thank you.
Give an answer to that.
Yeah.
Jen?
Yeah, I can pick that up for you, Councillor McCready. There's a sort of programme of work going on around wider than just sort of climate change, really just about sustainability, and we want to be in a position to have pulled all of those work streams together so that we can bring something very comprehensive back to the committee. So it's certainly not off the agenda entirely. Actually, there's quite a bit of background work going on, so we intend to bring that back to you probably June, July time, depending on the dates for the next municipal year.
Thank you. Thank you, members. And I close the meeting. Oh, sorry?
As we seem to have a gap in the work programme, I've been advised this is the best committee to do a review of the planning department and the delegations that they are allowed to have.
I can certainly take that suggestion away. We'll have a think about how what best we can do and how best we can present that back to committee. We can bring that back perhaps for discussion at the next meeting.
Laura?
Overview and scrutiny, as you know, look at all the work programmes for all the committees, and it is something that has been considered to be considered in the next municipal year.
Does that answer your question?
It does answer the question. It's unsatisfactory, but it answers the question.
I'm sorry about that. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I close the meeting at 20 past. I was going to say 9, but 8.